This conference will now be recorded.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to break it down into sort of three main topics that I'll be covering. We'll be going through the dashboard, because this is one of those forms where there's a lot of information there, a lot to interact with, and a lot of different ways you can really make sure that you're getting the right information out there. I'm going to talk a little bit about buttons and helping people navigate. Definitely, making sure that your language or something that matches what you think parents are going to be expecting or applicants are going to be expecting, especially in the navigational portions of the registration. That is something that can be customized. Then I'll talk a little bit about incorporating RegPack into your website and other pages through anonymous forms. And I'll get into a little bit more detail when we get there. But again, three main sort of places that I'll dive into. And if you do have other questions about either something related to that or other customizational options that you want to go into, you can definitely cover those. Okay, so starting with the dashboard. So like I said, a lot of information that's on the dashboard. The dashboard is actually a form that you can edit in RegPack just as you can in any other form, but this is a system form and it's not a form where you can collect new information. So that's basically the only rule about the dashboard. You can't add fields to collect information. It's not going to store that data, but it can present information. And there's a lot of different ways to have people navigate to other places to make more orders or update their information accordingly. So I'm logged into the dashboard on the front end. This is what an applicant sees. And in this system, this is the system that we've been covering recently. Did an example of a 2022 program with parents registering kids. But the dashboard, and the reason I do want to highlight this group style system is there's a lot that can be done right here with the family members or group members widget, we call it. So all of these different boxes here that you're seeing, these are all different things that are presenting obviously the information about registration. I've got the two kids here that I have registered already. And then I've got information here. These buttons can actually help me navigate towards completing their registration. So by going to the registration, they'll take me to that first, nope, it's gonna actually kick me out. Nope. Well, I'll go ahead and find that same family member test. So I was switching around between projects, which is probably why it did that to me. Okay, so now let's go ahead and go to the registration here. And it takes me to that first page. This is just the registration information. When I go back to, one of the buttons that I've found really helpful and something that we've made a lot more easy to use is the make payment and add camp session. This is a button that you can keep on at all times, even if they've already made orders, which is critical, right? Because if you have more than one thing or they want to be able to go back and update their orders, having that button here as opposed to the other way to do it, which is you can go to the side panel here. Of course, this is always, or the progress bar here, that's always a way to navigate for these records, but just going to add the session here takes me right to that product selection page that I had built out earlier. So now let's talk about how to make sure that that's presenting and also how you can customize those buttons. So going back to the back end, like I said, it's a form that you can edit just like any other form. In terms of how you edit, just you can't add certain fields. So it's going to be scrolling down to where you get to system forms. So by default, they'll be tucked down below here. For the most part, they're structured in a way with intention, so there's not like a lot of big structural changes that we'd recommend making. But the dashboard I do like to talk about because there's a lot of flexibility that you have in terms of how you can present the information and what information that you are presenting. So for most templates in RegPack, this is going to be the structure that you're seeing. If it's an individual system, meaning just one person signing up, you'll just have a applicant registration status widget as opposed to both a parent application status and family members. So in a group system, it's getting all the orders and that information. And typically you'll see that towards the top, but all of these, just as any other fields, can be moved around. So whatever is going to be most important to your applicants, you can bring to the top. I've seen a lot of people use this text box up here and add additional information that's pertinent to what would happen when somebody may have already completed registration or things they need to make sure are completed after they've created their profile or are logging back in. This is just another open text box, so you can add any of the presentation fields into an additional text, additional information onto this dashboard form. So again, none of these fields that are collecting information are going to function on the dashboard, but anything that you have down here in terms of presentation will. Let's go ahead and toggle over to that family members. I want to talk a little bit about this one because so here you can see how different ways you can customize it. You can change the name. Obviously, if we're not registering kids, we don't have to use that name. Let's do group or attendee profile. So if it's a group signing up multiple members for an event, that's something you can change. And then we're going into, of course, this is actually custom because I have a project setting saying it's a camp. So that's also something that is gonna be there and can be changed. But now we have down here, we have the allow deleting camper through the widget and always present add services and products button for each camper or group member after they select a product or service. So this is a setting that allows, if they accidentally made an additional, duplicate registration by mistake, they can edit that. And that's sort of, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. This is an option where the default setting may be off on your system, but I think it definitely is helpful, especially if you have maybe more than one product that somebody might be adding, like even just like merchandise or anything else, or a second session of your program. Having that on will make it easy for them to just click a button and then it takes them right back to product selection as opposed to navigating from the progress bar through their registration. Because if they have already selected at least one thing in their product selection form, it'll usually mark as complete. So making sure that they have a button to press instead of having to click through to find it is definitely helpful. And now going down here to the button values themselves. So as you can see, pretty much any button that you choose to add in and present in this family member widget can be changed. So like I said, if it's not children or children specific that are registering, you can definitely edit that here. And then of course anything else in terms of these buttons that make more sense for you, or add sessions, or add camp session, that sort of thing can all be customized. So I think I'm going to leave it as there because that widget is, I think, the most interesting. The rest are relatively self-explanatory. If you have questions, definitely let me know. But I think since there's other things we can talk about, I'll switch over to those things. So let's actually go to, which I think is a good segue because we talked about changing the buttons on this specific widget. Now buttons on the forms themselves, navigation, and especially something that a lot of folks don't necessarily know, which is being able to change that initial account creation process or login process, those buttons. So another system form is the it'll be create profile or create registration and login. This is something that you can actually update as well. So of course the information here, this is the login, the create account widget. This is something you wouldn't want to necessarily make any changes here. You can control Google login and then usernames that aren't emails. Definitely those settings, I think we typically recommend you leave as off, so it's enabled for both of those. But the create account especially, this is sort of your introduction to registration if that's your process, if you're having people create an account to register. So adding information here as needed, definitely something I've seen a lot of organizations really benefit from. And then also down here, this is something, let's go ahead and save that. That can be fun. This is I think the default language to sign me up for the label. That'll just get you started. But any of these buttons, the go to next step buttons, you can change the text here. So, I mean, a boring alternative would be create account, but you can definitely get as creative with it as you want. And so I did that specifically on the register create account form. Changed it to let's get started, which is something you can do by before you go in to edit and save the form here. You would just change the form name from here, edit form properties. But again, those buttons, the go to next step buttons, if it's something where you want to make it more personalized to your organization, you can go into any form and edit that button. The only form that won't have a button is going to be the dashboard, because there's no next step from the dashboard. It's kind of a centralized location. Okay. So talked about specifically the dashboard, talked about other ways you can sort of customize the buttons, especially around navigation on any of the forms. Let's talk, since we're going right along here, let's go straight over to something that's kind of a completely different from what I just did, which was the create account step, and talk about anonymous forms and unique entry points. So I'm going to actually switch straight over to a couple examples I have on a test site that I created here on just a free Wix site. You can do this on, of course, if you have a website or any other web tool. These same tools are going to work. But an anonymous, so this is actually the one that we just were at, and that's the create account process. An anonymous setup is going to be something where they don't have to create an account to get started. Now, they're not going to be truly anonymous, because let's go ahead and make sure one of these is presenting. Oh, it's still loading. That's the problem. Oh, man. Well, we'll have to send some examples later if this one doesn't load. But it was just loading a while ago, but I have updated that project since. So an anonymous system, as I mentioned, something where you don't have to create an account in order to get started. I'll go into that project that I was probably messing around too much in before, and show some examples of what those forms are. And also we can, of course, look at the template site as well. So a good use of this, and an example that we have in mind here that I was going to show, is if you have two different types of program categories or different sections of your course catalog, or any different places where people might be coming into your website. Or it can also be a tool that you're using if you're having a partnership with a specific organization to do certain programs, and you want to get people straight from their website and having them, instead of having them click away from their website. And so what you can do is have a different program registration start on the same project, essentially, and not have to require an account creation to do that. So something that we've talked about before, and definitely has been around in RegPack for a while, is the ability to embed the entire registration project by going to project settings here. And that's just, so even if you have that create account process like the one I showed, that would have been from going from the project embed code. Now, to have different entry points, you're going to be using the form fields, the form embed code. So the way that you would do that, let's first talk about what we want to present on these forms, right? So this is going to be where you want to have people get started on registration right away. And typically, for a lot of people who want to skip the account creation first, that's selecting what program they want to sign up for. So allowing certain products to be presented first is something that you can do. Basically, all you have is a form, and you add the product selection. If it's not already there, you just go into products and services, add that to the form. And then when I click on the tool itself, see these products are triggered, so it's not showing me what, because there's nothing that's default going to show here, but it's going to be there, or it'll show the products themselves. And then I'm selecting which products I want to show here, because this is just for the specific workshop course options that I wanted to present here. You can, of course, and actually default is going to have all product offerings present. But if I want to select specific ones, I just go to that tool right there, and then choose which products I want to add. So if you do select a category, it'll automatically, even if you add new options to the category, add those in as well. If you're selecting specific products or specific sessions in the category, it won't do that by default, just as a heads up. But this is how you control what's going to present for this specific product page. Here you have some other options. I'm not going to go into too much detail. These are sort of the defaults that we have. If you don't want people to actually select the products but just see them, that's what this means. But we're going to, in this example, just have the ability to actually select them right up front. So you can do that for multiple, as many different forms as you want. And then in terms of making sure that this form is going to be something you can present at a certain place, the way that you're going to do that is by making the form anonymous. So basically, it doesn't need an account to get to this page. Once you have that, you can set the form as a registration start point, and then it's going to give you an iframe code specific to this form. So again, this form doesn't need to be triggered because it's something there's no account required, or account creation required. Once they do submit this form, it'll automatically submit an account for them. So I won't go into too much additional detail here because we are close on time, and definitely. So if this is something that would be interesting to you, definitely seen it work really well for clients, especially if there's more than one program that's being offered or different places where they might want people to start coming in. Definitely let me know, and I think also be a conversation if that's you or somebody on your team who's editing your website, something that they can work on as well. I haven't touched this site in a while, which is probably why when I messed with the project, it's not presenting, but to get that here, it's really just copying that into a line of code, and then it's specific, you know, the embed code for whatever tool you're using. In this case, it was Wix.
Great, thank you very much, Connor. As Connor said too, and he mentioned, this is great for partnerships, and it allows individuals to come in through a partner's website and then go directly to your registration without having to sort of click through. So it shortens that registration process for them, which is always a good thing. So, again, I guess we'll open up. We're going to go ahead, dive into Kahoot. We got a quick little game here. It's 6 questions. So we're going to go ahead, get that out of the way, and then open up for some questions in case anybody has anything that they'd like to ask. So we're going to go ahead and share my screen. For those of you who have been with us in the past, you can go ahead and you're going to go to Kahoot.it, and there's that passcode right there, that game pin. So once you go ahead and go to www.kahoot.it and enter that game pin, you'll be all set to start playing. All right, we'll give it another minute.
As we're waiting for everybody to get all settled here, one of the reasons why I think we want to make it so easy to do the embed code is that, I mean, at the project level, it's something like we said we've been able to do for a while. And even when it's just when it's not like a whole anonymous setup, even just having the full registration on the website we've seen the statistics that it increases the amount of completed registrations by people not navigating to RegPack, to the regpacks.com site. There's definitely things, you know, like what I've done in my examples, that you can do to customize that site as well. But having it right there on your website is great. And when you make it even easier with a specific entry point custom to that specific applicant, just really increases that even more.
Very much so, as is the language adjustment, right? Being able to, we all know that within our organization, sometimes there's custom language or fun things that our clients get to know, and being able to embed that into our registration and make it part of the flow just makes it familiar. You know, we found with camps, you know, they've got a chant or a theme or a saying, and being able to integrate that into your registration just sort of personalizes it, and the families sort of resonate with that. All right, looks like we've got our players in. We're going to go ahead and kick this week's game off. All right, true or false, guys? RegPack allows me to collect e-signatures from my registrants. True. Perfect. Everybody knew that. Yes. RegPack gives you the opportunity to collect. It's a two-step e-signature process. All right. It's a tight race right off the back. All right, we've got a quiz. This is a multi-select, which means there's more than one right answer. Which of the following widgets can be added to your RegPack registration? A file upload, user's cart summary, background check feature, or auto billing options? Again, remember this is a multi-select, so there can be more than one right answer. All right, so the answer is all of them. So all of these can be added to your system. We saw a lot of them on that checkout, that dashboard. You can also do a file upload, which will allow users to upload JPEGs, PDFs, different files to the system. So if you have a medical form or a photo that you're asking for, all of that can be done through the system itself.
And the background check, I guess we'll talk about that later.
True or false? In an anonymous registration, applicants cannot create a login. True or false? False. So this is a tricky one. Connor, do you want to talk about this one for a second? Because this is that anonymous page piece we just went through.
Yeah, so a little bit of a trick question the way this is worded, right? So anonymous registration doesn't require a login, but actually as long as you're asking for an email address, there's a tool that actually automatically creates a login, generates a temporary password that can be sent out. And then in addition, there's another option that you have that I think might be the default, and definitely if that's something we want to talk about in the future. I didn't really go into a lot of detail on the anonymous setup, but there's different ways to allow account creation or even have them create their account sort of after they've gotten through that initial step. So lots of different ways to still include that even if they're not required up front.
Exactly. So we're always going to capture that information for you. So you can always reach out to individuals. All right. Ooh, this is a close one. All right. Next question is another multi-select, so more than one correct answer. I can customize the language on which of the following? The progress button, i.e. go to next step, applicant naming, i.e. parents and campers, checkout button, or register button? All right, so you can customize everything here but the checkout button. The checkout button is always going to be the checkout button. That's where they're making their payments. But all other things on this screen are customizable and, again, can be completely done to your preferred language in your system. All right, we had some good movement on that one. All right, true or false? I can have multiple entry points into one registration. True. Exactly. So that's what we were covering in those anonymous forms. As Connor went to a little bit with the website, you can have multiple entry points to the same registration on multiple tabs on your website, and a partner's website. You really do have unlimited entry points again. So if you want to give opportunities to your users to navigate into your registration system through different points of your actual web page, this is something you can certainly do. All right. Last question. It's the last chance to get some points here and move this around. See if we can just take fresh out of the top here. All right, quiz question, multi-select. I'm currently using RegPack for how many things? Examples are registration, surveys, donation collection, staff applications. So how many ways are you currently using your RegPack system? Everybody's right answer is their own answer. How many of you had no idea you could use RegPack for all of those things? Great. So it looks like it's a little bit of a variety across the board of how many pieces we're using RegPack for. So if you have any questions about that, always feel free to reach out. Our team is here to help you think about the creative ways that you can integrate RegPack into your day-to-day use to make your process easier. So in third place, it looks like we have Erin. Second place, BHEF. And first place, dun 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 dun, Freshish. So BHEF, if you can just let us know which individual you were in our meeting, we will make sure we're marking this correctly. And Fresh Ash, you as well. And thank you guys so much for playing along. Connor, I want to open it up for some Q&A and open it up to everybody who's with us.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah, if anybody has questions about what we talked about or anything completely different, this is going to be our last desk side chat until 2022. So. Hey, yeah, Aaron. Oh, looks like
I have a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. So the question that I have is about required forms, like medical forms and stuff like that. Would you recommend, in terms of the user experience and completion, what we really want is for people to pay, but these forms are also required. So my question is, should we move those? Can we move those out of the sequence before checkout? Or can we make them optional and then they can come back to them? I'm not sure what the best way to work that is.
Yeah, so yeah, you've got a lot of different options. I think making them optional would probably be the one I wouldn't recommend. And it does depend on how like quickly you want people to check out / like, you know, how much that's an issue at the beginning. One thing you can do, sort of a easy solution, would be to keep the same form flow where, you know, the agreements and things like that, medical information is just a mandatory but not roadblocked form. Actually, that's not something you can do for the e-signature. So what I was going to go into next, which is, and I have seen a lot of, you know, registrations, especially when there's a lot of those required, and they want to at least get something like a deposit or payment down first, is you can have those forms like you were thinking after that initial checkout. So you can actually have, the whole, you know, just the main checkout form just in the middle of your registration flow. If people are making, you know, partial payments or are on an auto bill plan, that same form is still going to be something they can navigate back to, and then have the agreements after. And then I have also seen people have like just a deposit checkout, and then have also a sort of a checkout at the end of the process after they've gotten that deposit, and then the sort of required additional forms are after as well. So you can get really involved with it. I think to sort of just answer your question more directly, if you want to move some of those forms after that checkout, it works totally fine.
Yeah, Erin, the one thing that I would recommend as well is making sure that you're clear with your language, because sometimes people will assume, well, I've made my payment and now I'm done. So if you're going to rearrange that order and that flow of the forms to make sure you're grabbing that income, I'd make sure that you're putting right in that free text, that adjustable language, you know, thank you for making that payment, or, you know, after you're making payment, please remember that there are certain forms we're going to have you require in order to fulfill your registration, and something to also monitor and keep in the back of your mind, because you can always have a generic email that you're sort of filtering for completion level and sending to those users as a polite reminder, like, thank you so much for making your payment. Let's make sure we're getting that medical information and those e-signature, you know, documents completed as well. Great.
You muted yourself, Dena. I thought you were about to say something, but I'll just take this quick moment to touch on the, because I noticed that was the one that was answered the least in that multi-select of what things you can add into RegPack, what information can be collected, was the background check information. That is a widget you can add. We have a partnership with Sterling Volunteers, and so that is and they do background checks, and that's something that the information can be completed through RegPack. You're collecting that information. if you are using a third party for background checks, you can still collect the information, of course, in RegPack, but there is an actual tool, a widget, if you will, that'll allow you to collect that information and direct it straight to Sterling volunteers.
Yep, and if that's something you're interested in doing, bear in mind that you do need to create a partnership with Sterling as well. And prices do vary based on your location in the country and the world. So bear that in mind, but we'd be able to put you in touch with Sterling. And as Connor said, once that partnership is developed, your applicants go ahead, enter it into their RegPack system, and then the API, the information bounces back and forth. And once they're cleared, they're updated in the system. So it sort of streamlines that process. It doesn't take them outside your registration to complete. So if nobody is considered using RegPack for your staff registration, your staff application, this is potentially another use for you guys. Again, it allows you to report on all your information from the same system. And depending on how you build it, you can, in theory, have your camper application or your child application and your adult applications all in one system for reporting purposes. So again, just a lot of things that you can use RegPack for that people don't necessarily think of right off the bat. Great. As if there's no other questions, thank you so much for joining us. As Connor mentioned, it's going to be our last one for 2021. We will be sending out the recording, the recap, some helpful links to get you guys through as you move forward in customizing your registration. And we'll get you guys that link and that invitation for our first 2022, where we're going to be focusing a little bit on, now that you're collecting data, what do you do with it? Now that your registration is open and people are registering for your system, how do you manage that information, and what do you do with it, and how are you using it most efficiently?
Awesome.
Guys,
thanks for coming, everyone, and we'll see you in 2022.
Happy New Year and happy holidays, everyone.
It's that same awful glitchy thing that won't let me out. Oh my gosh, it's a thing. Oh, guys, I'm trying to leave your meeting.
No worries. Actually, I'm having trouble stopping the recording too. There we go.